I'm Daniel Schwanke, the director of Notre Dame's Academic Center in Jerusalem, and you're listening to Jerusalem Talks. In this episode, Avraham Burg speaks with Dr. Rainer Kampling, professor of biblical theology and expert on Christian antisemitism at the Freie Universität in Berlin. In a wide-ranging discussion that stretches from the early 20th century to the modern day, Burg and Kampling address antisemitism within the Catholic Church, its role in the Second World War, and the Church's struggle to reinvent its relationship to Judaism today. Throughout the conversation, Kampling explores the Jewish-Christian relationship in Germany on the eve of the Second World War and the emotional scars that can still be felt.
Peace on you, Professor Dr. Rainer Kampling.
Peace on you.
I wanted to talk to you about so many things, about the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Jewish-Christian dialogue, and about the Nostra Aetate and Germany and our mutual past, and the Holy Land, both as a spiritual and political challenge. But I'd like to open in some other place with your permission, okay? Many hold the church, the universal church, as God's new Israel, right?
This is the idea from the 2nd century, yes.
Yeah. Can I hold Berlin as the new Israel?
No. No.
Explain to me my question.
Maybe this is the center of hearts and center of joy, but it's not the new Israel at all. And don't forget, Berlin is a very young town. No, especially not the heavenly Jerusalem.
But you know that I'm asking because despite the horrors of the previous century, Berlin is a very, very popular center of out of Israel Israeliness and out of Israel Jewishness. So there is something there that attracts this kind of a dialogue.
I think that personal, of course, it's a direct place between an airplane and you can go very fast. And there's a big joke now in New Berlin on the high holidays. You hear more Hebrew in the streets of Berlin than in the synagogues. A long time, and even now, the people I met from Israel or from the United States, Jewish people say it's a very peaceful place if you don't go to special part of the town. And so it's very near. I think a lot of my friends in Berlin see it in another way, but I know it's really strange, but you have to remember now, of course, it's another history, another remembrance. Now we have the children of the children of the children. They're coming to Berlin and they look in a little bit another way, I think.
So I would like to take it to really your field, which is the Christian Jewish dialogue, Nostra Aetate, and the package. When we go to the Nostra Aetate, which is started 18 years, Vatican II, right after the end of the Second World War, and actually was declared 20 years afterwards, the impact of the war was still there.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the relationship between Nostra Aetate of the 65 and the Second World War.
I think first we have to remember it's like Nostra Aetate is not a product of the church magisterium. It came from the people in the churches, especially in Europe. And it is idea what was born, I would say, perhaps very late in the 20s of the last century. And there were a lot of people in Europe wanting another situation between the Catholic Church, especially, and the Jews.
Why?
Because they thought that Jude Isaac was right. The Shoah was part of the Catholic history at all. You must remember Hitler was born in Austria. the half of the German people were Catholics, and nothing happened against the Shoah. It was, and of course, the church, the magisterium, tried very long to say we have nothing to do with it. And it was in the June of 45. The Catholic bishops of Germany wrote a letter, and they said we didn't bow our knee before Baal. As the Catholic stands up against Hitler. It was a lie, of course. It was a total lie. And so the question was, is it possible that the Catholic religion is part of the Shoah? Was a question what became a center for Nostra Aetate.
Let me try to understand it, okay?
Yeah.
We have the horrors of the Second World War, even if we take the package of both wars, because both were very, very horrific and was accompanied with crimes against humanity and atrocities, etc. Both wars, in a way, were secular wars, because you see the way how the Nazis went after Catholic, especially, in Poland and in other places. So the church could have said, listen, it's not our business. It's because these people who departed or left the church. So why all of a sudden people at the bottom expanded their responsibility and said, it's our responsibility?
One point, I think, is really people were tired of the lies. For example, we have a letter by Konrad Adenauer.
He was the chancellor, the prime minister of the time.
Yeah, and a Catholic.
And a Catholic, that's right.
He wrote 1947, but in a private letter. Of course, the bishops doesn't anything to help the Jews. And if you are looking in, and I know, it's easier to understand Shul in Chabad, but to understand Catholic Church. You have 1924. It was declared that antisemitism is a sin, a strict sin.
But this is in the Weimar Republic that was the last eruption of liberalism before Nazis took over.
Yeah, but it was 1924 declared in a papal letter. The words are, and as we all know, what is called antisemitism is a sin because it's hate. So first, it's sin. And you have to see that the German bishops, like any bishop, in the Catholic system, have to lead the Catholic people to heaven. But they never said they have to stop to be sinner. Nine, it is, and they stopped them not before killing of Jews or even Polish priests. The people always say, why did Pope Pius XII didn't say anything? He didn't anything to kill the killing of the Polish priests. So it's a problem. And so, looking back, the Catholic bishop did nothing against the devil of the Nazi time.
Can I offer you a little bit of a different reading, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say that the bishop and the priest and the clergy is a human among humans, and if the society goes this way, they go that way. They're not much different, though they have maybe a heavier ethical responsibility. But maybe the feeling, the guilt feeling that led or generated the Nostra Aetate was, even if Europe is so secular, since Spinoza and since Kant and since Hume and since whatever, even if Europe is so secular, it's a Christian space. So something so horrific happens amongst us. So whether we did it ourselves or not, whether we supported it or were indifferent, this is secondary to the fact that it happened here. And therefore we have to take a position.
Yes, it's true, but you have to see there, I wouldn't use the word guilt. This is a problem there. You will find nobody who is says he has guilt.
But shame? What will you use as a emotional term, conscience term?
So, but how to say it? If you, I only can say it as a historian, as a theologian. The lying of the German guilt start at the 8th May of 45. 1945, there will be, of course, he was a Nazi, a Protestant bishop, telling the people, now it's enough. You have to talk about it. Nothing happened. But what is with our German soldiers in Russia or something like that?
What about?
Yeah, what about?
Autism, yeah.
There's a lady writing for the New York Times, I don't remember her name yet, really great. She made beautiful photos and she wrote in a letter to her mom, I think, believe it or not, I don't met any Nazi at all.
And the year is 45?
In the May of 45. You must remember one of the doctors in Auschwitz, he were captured by the British army, then put to Poland, and he wrote his wife from the jail in Poland, I don't understand why I'm in jail. I didn't anything. And if you are looking at the Eichmann protocols, I don't think that it is bad. He doesn't feel guilt at all.
This is what Hannah Arendt said.
Yeah, but Hannah Arendt has the wrong words for it. I'm a little bit more like Gershom Scholem. She was talking, the very, very devilish of humankind can be in the banality of the humankind.
So
there's a difference.
Hang on, Rainer, hang on. You fly too high for me. Let's touch down for a few seconds, okay?
Yeah.
You say, if I understand you correctly, you actually say two things. On one hand, the Nostra Aetate was a kind of inner Christian dialogue about assuming some responsibility regardless of the Jews. It's not that the Jewish lobby put a pressure on the church, do something unlike what happened 20 years ago. So it's an inner debate within the church. And the second, in a way, I use a word you didn't like because I don't have any better one. It gave birth, the Nostra Aetate of 65 gave birth to theology, maybe not theology of guilt, but theology of responsibility.
I've forgotten to say there was a problem. The feeling against the hate against the Jews came mostly from the Bible, so told the magisterium 100 of years. And you see, we have a biblical revolution in the last century, in the last 50 years. And even Catholics can't believe that the whole totus populus was the whole Jewish people were standing in the front of Pontius Pilatus. It was a problem of legitimation. And I have to tell, I always tell stories. It's a problem of my learning Hebrew. It was only 5 years telling stories because he didn't like to teach Hebrew. So my Hebrew is very bad, but I know a lot of jokes. But so you must imagine 1958, a commission of the Pope wrote, we need new theology of Judaism.
Towards Judaism?
Towards Judaism and about Judaism. Of course, the text is on Latin, so it's hard to explain. The Judaeorum means all. And then they have a very clever Catholic idea. They say the Catholic Church was never against Jews. This is an invention of the Protestant Church. And every Catholic who has something against the Jews are heretics because they behave like Protestants. This is a typical Catholic ideas in these times. You always bashing the Protestants, there's always a problem. And it was a very clever text, especially about Roman 9 till 11, but they were not allowed to publish it.
Wow.
They were not invited to the council, nothing. And so it was like not allowed scripture. They make it by their own in the private houses and put it through the fathers of the church. Until 1975, they were not mentioned. And then there was a celebration. It is a problem against or about. It's an inner Christian problem. For example, you have to see John 23. He helped Jews in Istanbul during the war.
He was the nuncio.
Yeah.
He was the papal emissary to the region.
Yeah, to the region,
Yeah.
and he knows a lot of Jews in Istanbul and elsewhere, and he knows, of course, the Jews from Venice. He was patriarch of Venice. So it's always a person. And then you see the next great step is not Paul VI visiting Israel, but John Paul, a man becoming Pope who played as a child football, soccer with a Jewish...
In Warsaw.
Yeah, with a Jewish boy. The first, perhaps like Petrus, but I don't believe there were a lot of Jews becoming Pope. So what I want to say is, I call it the fight against anti-Judaism and against hate against the Jews is part of the self-liberation of the Catholic Church.
From liberation from, be exact.
From unbelieving. And now, of course, he is talking the theology.
So let's take it for a second, okay? What happened because of the atmosphere and the Zeit of the time? The Zeit of the
German side.
Yeah, of the mid-20th century, it was essential to get liberated from the pathological relationship between the old church and the new church, between the old Israelites and the new Israelites.
This is pathology is a very, very good word for it.
So this was the time. There is a coffee in Jerusalem called Asa Berlin, which in the junction of the Gaza Street in which I was born, and you know, my family, we were born there, and Rehov Harav Berlin. So the beautiful name of the coffee is Gaza Berlin or Berlin Gaza. So I ask you now, at the time in which we know what Gaza means in 21st century, should this liberation should liberate it a little bit more beyond just liberation with the Jews, but be expanded to a different kind of a conversation with the Muslim world as well, or at least the Palestinian one?
The Catholic Church had a very, very great context to the Muslim world. You must remember, of course, it's visiting mosque and...
I mean, I'm sorry, Rainer, not the gesture of the Pope. I mean the theological level, the abstract level.
Yes, there is a...
Nostra Aetate, as much as Ratzinger tried to walk away a little bit from it, was a theological statement. Later became the implementation by gestures of popes, visiting shuls, synagogues, visiting mosques, etc. I say on the theological level, should there be a Nostra Aetate towards the Muslim world?
There is a part of Nostra Aetate to the Muslim world. The center of the text is, sorry, but I have to say it first, of Latin, cum estimate, with a great joy.
Estimation, appreciation.
Yeah, with a great joy. It's hard to translate. We are in modern times, even the young Catholics don't understand Latin at all. If you are not a Catholic, you will never notice that Nostra Aetate about Catholic Church and the Jews is the same, begins with words, what described in the Catholic imagination the sacrament of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a Catholic marriage is not to be solved. So, and with the Jews, it's of course not the question, but a really surprising thing about the Muslims is to say we are praying to the same God. This is a problem, as you perhaps know, because the Muslims don't see it in this way. This is the first. But
I put it like this. Leave aside the issue of one God or Trinity. Leave this aside. The commonality between Jews and Christians is that both accept the Old Testament and they argue about the new one. The disagreement between Christianity and Judaism and Christianity versus Islam, that Islam does not accept the Old Testament. So there is no common text.
Sorry, Avraham, I fight my whole life in this field.
I know.
There wouldn't be any Christianity without Judaism. There wouldn't be any, because without Judaism and the so-called Old Testament, what is part of the Catholic Bible, the Greek Old Testament. So you perhaps remember the Maccabees are part of the Catholic Bible, but not of the Jewish Bible.
It's an external book in Judaism.
Yeah, I only say Hanukkah.
Yeah.
This is not the same. Even if you only look in history, there is Christianity without Muslims. But it's not the same. It's absolutely not the same, and it's impossible to be the same, because Judaism, and this is what you call pathology. This is a problem. This is a problem since Peter left Jerusalem. Where is the difference to Judaism? Nobody can see it in the antique world. And until now, Christianity is full of Jewish beliefs in the Psalm, the one God. We don't believe first and all in one God, if you are looking at the so-called credo. And so it's perhaps a little bit typical. Of course, there are discussions. If you only look at the situation here in Berlin or in other cities in Germany, there are mostly practical questions the Christians talking with the Muslims about, because this is not a problem at all.
Stay here for a second, okay?
Yeah.
The 15th century, 1453, Constantinople, 1492, the Iberian Peninsula, Europe became strangers free, Muslims free. So Europe had the privilege of some 500 years to develop in its own.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, after 500 years or more, you have a very serious Muslim component within Europe, that some of them are second or third, even fourth generation Europeans. So it requires a kind of a concept, not just a practical thing. I close the street on Friday, you open the street on Sunday. It requires an attitude, especially the majority of the Christian philosophy.
I have to love you. I see you have a greater meaning. First and all, the Catholic, if you go to St. Peter, you can see in the Peter's Dome the word of the Gospel of Matthew, and the hell will not destroy you. You will sign always as victor, ecclesia militant. So there were hundreds years the church was not interested in any question outside of themselves. One thing I have to mention as a European, and even nowadays, never forget Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Which means?
Albania, there were always Muslims.
That's for sure.
Yeah, this is this crazy situation, especially in Austria, because we have a lot of anti-Muslim feelings in Austria. But in Austria, there is in the schools, there is something like we call in German Religionsunterricht, teaching about religion, even for the Muslims, since 1912, I think. But you are right. First of all, I would say the people are not very interested in religion at all nowadays. I'm living in a town, only 40% of the town are member of anything. The rest of the people are nothing, is nothing. They don't believe in God.
There was an article published in Haaretz this weekend, which is our New York whatever it is, I don't know what is it, what do you compare it to, which actually describe the kind of a more traditionalism in the younger generation.
Yeah.
And it brought to my mind, I once spoke with Martin Schulz, my friend Martin Schulz, candidate for chancellery, the president of the European Parliament, etc. And he said, Avrum, compared to my daughter, he said, I'm Attila the Hun. She thinks that I'm a right-wing fascist, but she marries at the church.
Yeah.
She's extreme left, but she wants to marry traditionally in a church. So maybe the formats of expressing faith are different, but the need for some spiritual input into life is back to life.
I am more than skeptical. Now we have to look at the special Jewish history in Berlin in the 20s of the last century, the really last century. Remember all Gershom Sholem, then all the other boys from
Martin Buber, Walter Benjamin,
all this.
Isaiah Leibovich, and my late father.
Leibovich, very well. Leibovich.
He was born in Riga in Russia.
But of course he was in Berlin. And they were from very normal families.
Sure.
And suddenly they became religious. I always want to write an article about this night, the dark night in December in Berlin, and suddenly Gershom Sholem went to a shul and is praying, and the people at home are celebrating Weihnachten. You have this story, you have tents. So it's a typical, of course, Sholem is another field, but even not believing people are going to church to marry. They visit the church like a concert. There you can't be, you have to be religious to take part in some things. And this is the same with a lot of young Muslims. Of course, I know a little bit of the Quran, but I'm absolutely sure that most people, young people, tell me they are strict Muslims, never ever looked in the Quran. It's a feeling. And of course, friends of mine, old Democrats, old socialists, and even communists were sitting here on my in my kitchen saying, "You don't believe it. My children go to the mosque. I don't understand the world anymore." They came. So this is a specialty. Look at the United States. They believe people who are absolutely anti-Christians believe they are true Christians. I'm very, excuse me, killing children in some camps at the border is not Christian at all. And may I say, touching women everywhere like Mr. Trump isn't Christian at all. So we have a...
I think that Mr. Trump is a theology by himself, but that's a different program.
I would say he is one of the riders of the apocalypse.
He is the fifth horseman.
He's the fifth horseman, or he's the Antichrist himself. I don't know it. But this is very, very...
You will say they are traditionalists more than they are orthodox, so to say, the devoted practicing.
Yeah.
So let me take it to a different place with your permission.
Yeah.
Nostra Aetate, our Nostra Aetate that we talk about, is very, very Rome-centered. But Rome is insignificant in the larger Europe, is less significant in the larger European dialogue. In a sense, if I want to understand the European dialogue, I must understand Germany. I mean, Europe without Germany is not like Europe without Italy. Okay, let's say politically wise.
Yeah, and nowadays, I'm afraid not. Mrs. Meloni is very successful.
We'll talk about it in 25 years' time, and we see. But I will say that economically speaking, power speaking, Germany is the powerhouse of Europe, or the most significant one. So I cannot just say, listen, Nostra Aetate chapter 4 or Annex 4 is Appendix 4 is about the dialogue with the non-church, not Catholics and not Catholic Church, and ignored the place in which politics is happening. So I must ask myself, what happens vis-a-vis this concept of dialogue, of reconciliation, of assuming responsibility? What happens in the place of power? What happens not in Rome, but what happens in Germany and Berlin? Is Berlin a good place for a dialogue?
I would say yes, because this is always a problem. I'm not a Protestant, so I always think from the Catholic system.
That's the conversation.
Of course, you see, we have you can say monthly at last 3-4 events about Catholic Jews and something like that. It's very active, but is it real? This is the question. Activity is not reality. I think this is very necessary to remember in our times. But there is a dialogue, I would say. There is a very, very special feeling. And now it came to a problem after Notre. I'm a little bit more critical than the other people about it, because the Catholic Church is like a very, very old ship going through the sea for 100 years. And in the way the Catholic Church needed the Jews centuries ago, they need an enemy. You can't be a Catholic without an enemy. It's impossible.
Like Jean-Paul Sartre said that the anti-Semite defines who is a Jew, you say the Jew defines who is a Catholic.
Yeah, so you need...
Wow.
This is a very, very Christian problem. Being a Jew, it's enough. If I understand Judaism in the right way, you can say, of course they are not Jews, but God knows. The heathen are children of God, so God will look for them. Impossible for Christianity. Everybody has to be a Christian. And so Christianity have not a positive, but a negative definition. To be a Christian is not to be like the others. And the others were for hundreds and hundreds of Jews. For example, even when the Muslims came up, the first idea was they were Jews. Some things they were wrong Christians, but that's not our problem. To say it in this way, nowadays, sometimes I have the feeling that they need the poor Jews nowadays, to feel good.
Wait a second. Let's assume the Holocaust and the guilt and what this and then politics remove the Jews from the equation. So what does that mean? That in order to be a Christian by negative definition, you need a new enemy? Or it means that you have to change the definition to a positive one, instead of say, I'm not him, I'm not her, to say, I am A, B, and C. What's the challenge here?
The challenge is the second. This is the
positive definition.
But you must remember the time when in England were published the most books against Jews, or Shakespeare and all this. There was no Jew anymore. They don't have to be a Jew or a synagogue or something like that to be against Jews.
Up until Cromwell and Menashe ben Israel, the Jews were expelled from Great Britain for centuries.
Yeah, but it was a great, great hate against Jews.
Sure.
And they were everywhere. Then, of course, you have the absolute crazy idea that the Pope was a Jew. And so you have the Tudors, they were complete Meshuggah, the whole family, and always thinking they were killed, as this was right by their own. But the Jew of Catholicism is an invention, because they really think that Jews are always thinking about Christianity. They can't accept that there's people having the same books.
Will you argue that those in the church who still need the Jews the old way, as the Antichristus or as the devil, the alternative, they know Judaism of 400, 500, 600 years ago, and they do not know modern Judaism? They fight a demon which does not exist anymore?
No, they don't Judaism at all. For example, Avraham, you have always to think that people have, if you are talking about religion, facts are not a system of religion.
No. On the contrary.
Yeah. As
As Immanuel Kant.
Immanuel
Or
Kant.
David Hume.
Yeah. Look
Okay.
at them. Look at them. And do you really want to live a life like Immanuel Kant, a whole life in Königsberg? No, go away. No, I
So
think.
facts are not a ground for faith. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, but some facts I think are a ground for faith because feeling lonely, feeling without help, like it is written in the Psalms, who will help me? I think it is 63 that the Psalm starts with about "it's enough," and it's a very, very human fact. The human life is mostly "it's enough," and sometimes it's beautiful, but. You see, I'm like an old man coming from one field to the other. But now to say it very clear, there were no really interest in the life of Jewish people, in the real life. Because the Jewish life was what was the Catholic imaginary. For example, they don't ask their neighbors, but most of the priests, I would say, the neighbors was different. But look at the text, you see a community and you can ask, how can they exist? So it's all an imaginary. There's no real Jew in any Catholic text at all until nowadays.
Yes and no, Rainer. Let me push back a little bit, okay?
Yeah,
Merkel, as a chancellor, went after multiculti.
Mhm.
Okay, she was against all this mumbo-jumbo multiculturalism, fine. But when you walk the streets of the big cities in Germany, take Hamburg, take Hanover, take Berlin, take Dresden, take München, but especially Berlin, it's a fascinating city because all the histories and all the pasts are presented in the street. I mean, all the memories. So maybe it's not multiculti, but it's multi-memory.
Multi-memory, yeah.
And multi-memory is something very, very challenging because you cannot cancel a chapter from the past. So a common Catholic in Berlin has to face the presence of the Jews and the presence of the Protestants and the presence of this and that. You cannot avoid it. So now when you say, people in a way canceled the other, I say in now remembering societies and remembering big cities, metropolitan cities in Germany, it's difficult to forget elements. How do you face this multi-memory reality?
This is a personal question and a theoretical question.
Go for the personal.
The personal is if we are going to German cities, you see a lot, I have to say it, perhaps it's not wrong. In German, I would say Leere, emptiness. The German cities are full of emptiness.
Emptiness of content, emptiness of meaning.
Of history, of memory, and knowing there is something very, very wrong. Germany, for me, it's always, since I was a young pupil, when I went to school, there was a feeling like, how to describe it? Something died and nobody's talking about it. It is empty. The place is empty. So the remembering the not being there. Now,
it's the memory of the absent.
Yes, this is the memory of the absent. You're going to the town, and for me, I go to the Hamburger street, and of course, there's a sign, there's the Mendelssohn grave, and so.
Moses Mendelssohn grave is the only grave left standing in what was once a cemetery next to the Jewish quarter.
Yeah, what I remember is that the German terrorism don't even stop 45 during the bomb. On this place, there were a lot of killed, and I have to say God is right, they were killed SS people, and they were buried there. So this is a sign. And I give another example. In the Hamburger Straße, there is a place where is no house at all. There's a small,
The missing house.
the missing house. All the people.
Let me just describe it to the people.
Oh, yes.
You have one home here, one house here, and in the middle there is a space that used to be the middle house. And they put on the wall the names of the families, Jewish families that were living in the missing house.
Yeah, yes.
Is that the one we're talking about?
Yeah, but you say the right, but they are not only Jewish people living there.
Mhm.
But if you are talking about that, first and all, it is the sign of the war, if you want it this way. You have streets in Berlin near in. I'm looking of very new buildings after the Second World War. I'm living in a house that was built with the money from the great German-French War. So you have always this. But this house, if you ask people, all the people say it's a monument for the Jews. But it's not a monument for the Jews. It's a monument of, like you say, emptiness, like this as an absence. It's not, of course, you have the Hamburger graves and then you have the south. But what I mean is, for me, this is Germany. Now I see all the young Jews from Russia or even the young Jews from France, Great Britain, even the United States, or of course Israel. But this is another part. Of course, there were some Oriental Jews in the 19th century in Berlin, but nowadays it's normal. You can, and now it's a complete other generation. What I want to say is, in the absence is a knowing about this, what happened. And this is part of the memory. And how you interpret, you know very well that it's a German system to say it is not allowed to happen again. Auschwitz, niemals wieder.
Never again.
Never again. It was a great, now I forget the name because I remember him always with some great Italian author. We said about Auschwitz, it happened, and so it can happen again.
Primo Levi.
Yeah, Primo Levi, of course. And this is the way how you look at it.
So let's move towards the end of our conversation. We started by exploring the negative contribution of the German of the time, of the previous century, to generate eventually a new paradigm, new dogma of the church called Nostra Aetate, at our time. Very accurate, very contemporary papal statement. Now we're back to Germany, what we describe as the memory of the absence, that you feel kind of hollowness behind all of these monuments and all of these signs. But I will ask a further question. We were born into a generation that had back to back with the generation of the Second World War and Holocaust. Our parents, grandparents, our elders knew the reality. Our children heard it from us. Now it's the fourth or fifth generation then after. With the politics of the time, with the reality, with the realpolitik of the time, is there a real commitment at the fifth or sixth generation of Germans after the Second World War to continue this kind of a dialogue? Or is it just a hobby of like us people who are still committed to the horrors and to the never again?
Avraham, it's late. I didn't have a coffee. How should I answer this question like this? First and all, yes, and it is true. This is a remembering. The first things came when all the internet things came up. I looked where my father was in the Second World War.
You didn't know? You didn't speak about it at home?
Of course not.
Of course not.
In Germany, if you are born, of course you are talking always about the Second World War, how hard it was, and so. But talking about Jews, impossible. Nobody knows anyone. And this was a problem because there was, she was called in the 50s, she was a bastard. Nobody wanted to know her, but the problem was she was the this is the only good German because she was really helping a Jewish family.
Who is she? You're talking about whom?
She was the sister of my father, my grandfather. Yeah.
Family
But he
member,
didn't
member of
live-
the family, yeah.
Yeah, but nobody talked about it because even now in the 50s, they don't want to talk. Now, you must imagine the first time I was really talking about Judaism, Shoah, and something like that was starting in the 70s during my studies.
Wow.
Of course, I know Jewish history because I read a lot. I was a very lonely child, so I read a lot. You must imagine every morning when I went to school, I went near the street and there was a stone remembering the synagogue who was destroyed. But if you ask someone of the people, nobody remembers there was a synagogue. So this is the first story of the being in the generation. Nowadays, there is really, I must say, in Germany, for example, I can say there are very, very few students I was teaching believing that the Jews crucified Jesus. No, in the other way, they say, how could the other people, the earlier people, believe the Jews crucified Jesus? It's not in the text. The Romans did it. So you have, perhaps you know what it is, this looking for your enemy, the Catholic antisemitism, looking as though it's not there, because the people always learn in Nostra Aetate. This is a problem for me because I lost my enemy. So you see, I'm a Catholic. And so it's normality. The people, even not like in the 50s, when suddenly a lot of Catholics study Old Hebrew. This is all, nowadays this is normal. The people know Judaism is the nearest religion. And so I would say, of course, but the energies, the joy of research, it's not the same. I think perhaps this, you are right, there must be a biographical factor, so you can do it this way, because I did it for 50 years or 40 years, and it was, of course, it was hard, but it was a part of joy.
Rainer, I'll tell you, put it like this. I do not volunteer to be your enemy in order to help you with your identity, okay?
Yeah, nobody.
And this is not because I do not like to disagree with you or to have polemics with you, but that because I really admire your way you walk between all the structures, the theological, the theory, the practical, the person, the German. I mean, you have so many components in your identity, and I see how you struggle to create the equilibrium between all of these components. And if there is one thing I'm grateful for this chapter, is the one thing I did not prepare myself for. I was ready to meet you are serious, German philosopher, historian, researcher, and in a way, I had a feeling that the conversation was between human beings rather than between the theorists and the listener. And I'm grateful for this human dimension of the conversation.
So I am, but I have to say, Jews were never my enemies, but always the Catholics.
Oh, let's cut it here. No, I understand what you say, and this is to say, Rainer, I really hope it's a beginning of further conversations about this. It was fascinating, and I'm grateful. Vielen Dank.
Give my love to Jerusalem.
Yeah, find me a good prayer for this tortured city nowadays. Let's pray together.
Yeah, this is what I always do, and give my greetings to all my beloved ones there.
I promise right away.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Jerusalem Talks is brought to you by the University of Notre Dame's Academic Center in Jerusalem and was made possible by the efforts of Avraham Burg, Daniel Schwacke, Gabriel Mitchell, David Turgeman, Ben Wallach, and Nathan Steinmeier. Learn more about us at jerusalem.nd.edu.